believe I'm live. It's another day. I'm liking the routine I got. I slept well. Um, I feel like I've been sleeping better, which is a big thing for me because I don't sleep that much. Um, I've never been able to sleep consistently, or I've never been able to sleep in. That's another thing. I've never been able to just sleep in when the day, when the day is awake. Anyway, welcome if you're watching this in time. Um, Remember, these are never right. Me being right or wrong. It's just a yapper, just someone yapping about the world. Beautiful morning. It rained last night. It's supposed to storm pretty badly, but here we are. Blue skies. Anyway, screens are drugs. The fear of being recorded, or always being recorded, I should say, and the death of expression. It's sort of the path of conversation, or the path I want to follow today. I gotta find this page in my notebook real quick, but hopefully I find it. I should have had this out before, but like I said, these are never planned. No, I'm never just writing and reading a fucking script. Just know that. I don't think it's a bad thing to read from a script. I probably once I record videos and post these more. Um, I know it's right here. It's got to be right here. If I don't find it, it's okay. Found it. I wrote. No, I don't usually date these in my notebook. I mean, I never liked the idea of, especially for your own journaling. I don't like the idea of. I like the idea. I don't like the idea of it just being dependent on the time I'm in. I like the idea of these just being thoughts in my head and I'm alive. And I think that's really important for people to express themselves. But I wrote the ultimate drug: screens, TV, iPhones, or smartphones. Imagine a drug that alters your field of vision, then directs or drags the mind to a point of view. The drug doesn't stop until you unplug it or turn it off, but even then, what was directed or dragged into your attention still lingers until you turn it on again. Some don't even stop. I don't even stop. I suggest a drug, if that's the word you use, psychedelics too, but a drug that puts you out of Plato's cave. Screens and psychedelics now have that capability. However, screens are now part of the psychedelic experience. This allowing delusion and madness to exist among something that strips your identity, and with screens attached to that experience, the person or agenda behind the screen can seek your attention without ever having looked you in the eyes. Why I bring up psychedelics and that sort of topic is um, think psychedelics, in the same way screens um, kind of are, operating in this world, are very similar in the sense that they're misunderstood. Because I think the screen is a really great thing. These smartphones, this, the iPhone, the TV, the laptop I'm recording this on or live streaming this on. The internet. It is a great tool. I mean, without these things, I wouldn't be probably as, I wouldn't say well informed, but I wouldn't be like aware of myself in any sense without these things. And I think where psychedelics come to play is that, in the same sense that you can access a different world, a different reality, a different perception, just as a screen does, just as all sort of drugs do. But obviously, there's drastic and different effects that drugs have on people. I don't think drugs are necessarily a great word for screens or psychedelics, but it's the word we have. If you're gonna see me in person, ask for the crack pipe. I need a new pipe. Gotta be honest, but now diving into screens a little more, uh, being incorporated with psychedelic experiences is very interesting because some of my first, I mean, one of my first ever trip on psychedelics was. I won't tell you. I mean, I guess I'll tell you what it is. I don't really give a shit. I'm not making money on these, but it was acid, LSD, with some buddies. Um, sorry, we were one of our buddies had a opportunity to house sit, and we were in high school, and we just sought the opportunity. We were already smoking weed, and we wanted to expand the world. I wasn't on my screen much. I think we were like maybe texting or calling someone in the beginning, but I mean, if you've ever taken LSD, I mean, fuck. There comes a point where you're just like, ah, man, I'm in it. I'm in it. There's nothing that you could do or say. And I will say that, looking back on the trip, it was rather stupid in our behavior. Like, I remember myself just having access to like everything. And I don't know, as a kid, as a high school kid, I don't even know how old I was, 17, 8, I think it was 17, 16. Not a, I do not recommend this at that age, by the way. I'm not sitting here advocating for drugs or psychedelics. I'm just talking about what I've done. And if you happen to do them too and like them, well, kind of in the right place. Anyway, it was a very hectic night. I remember learning it. I remember like learning my own free will. I remember sort of like grabbing at things and putting them on and moving my body in a way. Like it was like the first time I remembered that, or one of the first times I remember that I was like perfectly capable of something. I was conscious. I could do anything. And I think I think what psychedelics do is that they awaken some sort of like, they awaken you from like your original way of thinking, your the grooves in your head that you've been going down, the paths that you've been going down all your life or have been building. Psychedelics sort of remove that, and they you operate from a here and now standpoint, and you're more interested about direct feeling, direct experience than I don't know anything really. I think as I grew more into the experiences, I started enjoying the experience differently for sure. But it was a really it was a really important time for me for sure. I remember feeling very open. I remember laughing with my buddy, my good buddy, who I would eventually start doing a lot more LSD with and smoking with, and start doing a little more mushrooms with. But this was all during high school. I'm 21 now. Um, so you can imagine, high school kid who's pretty much just, I don't know if it was like self isolation or alienation, but it was just like I took these things and I started seeing the world differently. I started getting into music a lot more and culture and people's perspectives, and I pretty much just stopped interacting with people at my school. And it wasn't like I didn't want to talk to people. It was just like these people have nothing to say to me that I want to talk about, and that was pretty drastic for me. That was a big thing. It was like communication and expression and finding people to talk about things with. So my circle immediately became smaller, but I think my love and appreciation for uh, the present moment, for direct experience, for myself, but also for like people, I think grew. But I guess what I want to talk about from those days is in the same way that we can talk about like your first psychedelic experience. I gotta sneeze. Ooh. But in the first way, you can talk about your first, or in the same way, you can talk about your first psychedelic experience. Um, we could talk about our first screen experience with screens and what screens or how screens really shaped our minds. And I was immediately like, when I when I when I asked myself that, I was like, oh my god, the screen was earlier in my life when I got first introduced. It was much more potent, much more around. Um, I had access to it like nothing. It was just there. I was a gamer for sure. Growing up, I was a gamer. Um, I had a Kindle Fire that I had maybe from sixth or fifth grade to middle school. I think in middle school I got my first phone that I could actually call people and text people on. It's but like I'm trying to. So in seventh grade, when I moved schools, sixth and seventh grade, we had iPads at my old school. We had laptops, or we didn't have any device. We had to bring our own device in middle school until we got laptops like the next year. Um, and I remember I didn't have a phone, so I brought my Kindle Fire, and I quickly realized I was like, this is bullshit. But I think I felt a little embarrassed to not have a phone. I remember that feeling like I should get a phone. I need a phone, and I would complain to my dad about it. Um, but I also had this other side of me, this other feeling inside of me where it was like you're telling me I paid for this, and not me, obviously, but like my family paid for my device, and I'm being forced to bring it to school to use it for school. Like, no, fuck off. So I never ended up bringing it. Um, for that reason, I was like, you're the fucking provider, you're the teacher. And that was my first encounter with the screen being um, more relevant than the teacher. And obviously, at a young age, you're not thinking along these terms. I still don't think a lot of adults think along these terms. But I mean, in like sixth grade, I think we got iPads in my old school. And if you've ever had a fucking iPad, those are just, they're a lot smoother than a Kindle Fire, an Android. Um, but I remember like kids were getting in trouble for looking up pornography websites and downloading VPNs to get, to bypass certain apps and whatnot. And um, it was a whole ordeal with just like breaking the rules with the iPads. But I I'll try to go back a little farther in my mind about screens. Like in elementary, I remember computer class and whatnot, and learning how to type. Um, but like when I went home, I gamed. I played a lot of games. Played Lego games as a young kid. Why I'm building this perspective, first of all, it's very important to understand um, in a generalized perspective the amount of kids now who do not know anything else but the screen. I'm talking younger kids than sixth grade when they're getting an iPad, because that's what happened. The iPads were given to first graders or second graders in my original school, and everyone had a laptop in an older school. As I got older, whatever, or a laptop or iPad or whatever. But it quickly became. There were some teachers who still did this, but the majority of teachers started handing you iPads and the computer and assignments in a digital way. And this was in middle school. This first happened to me, and I don't know why I reacted in this way. Because I mean, I'm in eighth grade or seventh grade. I think it was seventh or eighth grade. I think it was eighth grade, and I was just a gamer. I was into music, indie rock and your basic music, rap and your classics. Really, nothing really too in a niche, but they were there were there was this belief in me or something, this notion where it was like these teachers don't give a fuck. If they gave a fuck, they would teach me something. They would teach me something. They would have an assignment for me, run me through lecture assignment. What ended up happening in a lot of classes was there'd be some Canvas or whatever program. I don't know. I just remember Canvas really. There'd be a program or a website or for you to create an account, and then you would have to run through like 15 little sub lectures to get to the main lecture or the main quiz. And those teachers who did it kind of in that way would, maybe start the class with a very fun, joking, 10 to 15 minute, um, maybe even longer, time waster of just talking and I wouldn't say dumbing us down, but like befriending us, right? And then they would hand us this assignment, and then they would sit there and look at they would do their own thing on their screens while we did our own thing on our screens. And there would be no communication. There'd be no talking. There'd be communication between the screen and you answering and whatnot. But for me, I I look at that perspective now, and I ask myself, with a device and the option, with a device and the option to just access something and I mean something along the lines of anything and of everything, it would almost make more sense to just do what you wanted on the screen than to be told to do what you want, or to be told to do something, even if you didn't want to do it. And how easy was it for me to just open another tab? Not, I mean, sure, to get answers, or just to watch a fucking YouTube video, or to look into something I was actually interested in. And I found that divide in me, and every time I got put on a computer, it was just like, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna do my thing, and I'm gonna get into my thing. So like at a young age, it was just that was my belief. At a young age, it was just like, fuck this. I'm gonna do my thing. And to be completely fair, I don't know how I sort of even got into some of the classes and some of the grades I did, because like it was just like, I'm a talker, I'm a speaker, I'm an interactive person. That's what I like doing, and I would be charismatic to the teachers because I wasn't. I don't think I was ever getting in trouble. I wasn't an evil kid, um, but I love talking and interacting, and I couldn't do that with a screen, and I don't think a lot of people can. Um, but so basically, in middle school, I just was like, yeah, no. If this is the way they're gonna try to teach me, it's just not gonna work for me. And so high school was the same experience in that way. Um, I want to. I don't know if I wrote this or I've heard this somewhere, but there's something I've heard or wrote, um, that kind of goes along the lines of that is, it's hard to have a fixed point of view when everything is happening all at once. And to me, that's what the screen is. This device, this alive thing that can summon anything. And I use summon because it is summoning. I think people in their language now are a little less direct in what we're actually doing on the screen. Um, but that was my main problem with school. Yeah, the screen could teach me far more, far better than someone trying to teach me in a way, in a specific way that the screen uh, was set up. And what I mean by that is like, when you fall into like a system or a program of teaching, there's underlying conditions and notions that are being put against you. But when you're seeking information in your own interest, it's not that I was learning math in my own time, no, or whatever, but it was just the ability to seek what I was genuinely interested in far outweighed the notions of other people forcing me to learn and access websites in a certain way. And quickly, it was more or less what the screen did was it because you have to realize the screen is direct in its actions. So as long as you could direct the actions into the correct way, how you got there didn't matter. So I'm not saying that cheating was always the end goal, but avoiding all the steps, avoiding most of the steps just to get to the same place. That was kind of the goal for a lot of kids, and we all, I mean, the kids adapted in that way for sure. Um, what's interesting for me is the fear and the dogma that the screen can create. I think a lot of people um, feared bad grades, feared their parents being angry at them, feared confrontation. Because that's an interesting thing. Also, I think the screen enables you to just be alone. So confrontation itself is scary. So avoiding all those things, avoiding all these hoops and loops and steps to um, just to get to the answer the right way, was the new normal because confrontation itself was evil, especially in a school system. To me, I never wanted to talk to my teachers really. I mean, there was a couple teachers I enjoyed, um, and I think saw me as a person, which is huge. It's, in my opinion, what makes or breaks a good teacher in any way, regardless of a school system or anything. But um, it really, for me in my life, I feel like it was inevitable that I eventually went to a more psychedelic outlook. Was interested in drugs and whatnot because I think at a young age I understood what the screen was, but at the same time, no one around me was telling me it, telling me kind of what I felt, not what I thought, but what I felt. And eventually, I found through online people and perspectives, I was like, holy shit, that's something I feel and I agree with. But before you even get to that point in your life or in your screen usage or your psychedelic usage, there comes the point of sitting with yourself, of being with yourself and figuring yourself out. And that's truly what high school was for me. Smoking weed was interesting. Um, partying here and there, drinking, the usual. Um, there was also to tie into the next topic of what I titled this about being recorded. It's also another factor of what phones in particular did. Um, it left basically no space or room for nothing, nothing but conversation, because there was always something to grab your attention. There was always something to record you. There was always something funny to show someone else. Um, at my lunch table in high school, a big thing for among my friends was like after we'd eat. I mean, if you remember those kind of meals, they weren't big. Um, but after they'd eat, they'd play their phone games. I hate phone games. I'd rather play on a fucking console, bigger screen. Phone games are just not that interesting. They're boring to me. But they'd really give me these phone games and just completely get into them. And I know you're not being recorded, but everyone has their screen out, right? And they're just looking at it and they're playing it and they're in it, playing Among Us. I remember that. But I never did. I hated it. I really did. I like being. Well, one thing about me, when I'm out in public, I might have music on, sure, but I'm never going to have. Um, I'm really not going to be on my phone playing or anything, especially out in public. I like being in the moment in the public, so you can read people and see people. That's gone. It's dying. Um, but being recorded anyway. Um, especially in high school, you have to realize you're a developing teen kid with hormones. You're figuring your body out and yourself and your sexuality and your thoughts. And now comes this. device where there's this haunting feeling of being recorded. And it's not like everyone walks around recording something, you know? But everyone does have a camera in their hands or pockets at all times. So just like acting out of unison, I think immediately sparks interest. Um, and but also act, what the other side of acting out of unison is acting in unison, right? So once one person had their phone and they were in this phone world recording, usually another person would too, but also in the same sense of like once one person's like caught up in the phone world and they're living in this phone world talking about it, they're talking about their social media culture and whatever and their text and whatnot, then the circle gets created because everyone has a phone and everyone can usually access what they're talking about or you can usually access something on the phone to talk about it with others, right? But when you're creating something without anything to be the topic, it results in you creating the conversation and the thing. But the phone does that now, or did that for people, and it does that for people, and it leaves that sort of novelty or that freedom and the of expression. It kills that. It literally kills that because what is someone who is um, what is someone acting out of unison of the phone culture, of the social media culture, the internet culture? It's usually someone who, in my opinion, I'm not talking along school lines anymore. I'm talking about just in the world now. Someone acting out of line is usually the content of what we watch. Someone who has that ability, or not even the ability, but just has that moment in time where they sort of crash out along or outside the lines of the phone, and they become like this a targeted thing, and people immediately just go towards it because it's expressing themselves. It's new, it's novel, it's expression, and I think that ties into like what the death of expression, um, because that's another thing. I think expression is just it's gone. It's fucking I think I've talked about this a couple days ago or something, but there was a cute girl I tried talking to, and I smiled at her. I kept making eye contact. Wanted to bridge the gap. She kept giving me nothing, like nothing to go off of. Not even like any like sort of like signal to go up and talk to her. I'm not saying there's always a direct signal, but like every time I would try to break the ice or look at her, she would look down, back at her phone immediately. She wouldn't. She didn't. When I smiled at her, she didn't even smile at me. So I was like, "No, I'm sorry. If you're just that into your screen, you can fuck off. You really can. Um, you really can. If you're that into your fucking screen." And this goes. I think when you're, I'm talking about the unison thing now. When you're acting in unison along the culture of the phone, you get put into a box of certain emotes and expressions, and you out of fear of confrontation, like that girl I'm gonna guess was, um, regardless if she feared men or what. It's not fear. It's more or less like the phone. I don't have to confront the phone. The phone confronts me. You understand? Now, when you're meeting someone else, you confront them. They confront you. But a phone, you don't have to confront it. The phone is just there. The screen is just there. You confront it. You confront your perception of the phone. The phone confronts you because you're not always, especially in these access points, these websites and websites and apps that we're using. We submit ourselves to these algorithms now that are being ran through by AI, but we submit ourselves to these algorithms that kind of curate our own self into a digital thing to feel like a digital nervous system that's sort of downloaded into a screen. And what confronts us during it is our perception of it. But the things that confront kind of the things in it, the media, the content, you want to feel like it's at random because you're not choosing it, right? But it's not that it's being curated, it's that it's mirroring where you are at all times. W- Obviously, you can go outside that, obviously. But here's the real kick. In this world where convenience is at our fingertips via the screen, you can summon anything with the screen. If I wanted to watch something horrible, murderous, I could. If I wanted to learn about elephants, I could. Now, I'm not going to incriminate myself, but if you want to learn a little more about, say, illegal shit, you could. Um, so imagine these social media algorithms, right? Their objective is not for you to be their objective is not for you to be anything. It's not for you to just like realize your own self-expression. Obviously you can, but the goal, in my opinion, I heard this I think one time where I think I heard this in a documentary maybe, where it's like if you are not paying for the product, then you are the product. Now, the trick, in my opinion, of these algorithms and these social media companies is to present itself as this thing you can become, let's say, an influencer. The influencer is the goal to kind of hang in front of you. It's like imagine posting videos online and making thousands, and then you have to get into that, consistency, that little niche of doing it right. But there's more passive viewers than there are active participants because it feeds in itself. But the goal is to never. It's not to expand outside of everything. It's to formulate yourself into one thing and to get really dogmatic about it in a way. And when you like what I said earlier, when you're not paying for the product, then you become the product. Now, the product, you could argue, is attention. Attention is the currency of the world, I would say. But when you can direct attention towards niches or the content of the media, that's that's almost the created product of the participants within the content of the media. But when you direct your attention towards the medium in which the content is being distributed in, you kind of open yourself up to a more non-biased attitude, or a seeking attitude. And the way the phone and these screens are formulated is we're more directed towards the content, aka the media, instead of the medium. And the medium is the message, as Marshall McLuhan would say. The medium, which are these screens, are the first thing we are entering. The screen itself is what we are entering, not the apps. Everything, the apps and the content are secondary to us is submitting our attention to the screen. And it's not that we're injecting anything in our bodies with these screens, but we're submitting ourselves to the medium and all its, I want to say, natural occurrences that create a certain neurological and kind of biological response in ourselves to just the screen. And let's just go a little farther with this. Language is the driving factor that creates the world as we know it, that holds it together. Now, let's compare two people. One person is going into the screen with the idea of thinking in language and wanting to find words to help their world. I wouldn't say help their world. I want to say just to, it's not that you're helping or comparing your worlds. It's like you're going in to explore the world as you know it through your perception and language tendencies. But let's say another individual is looking at the screen as a more abstract thing that you can do anything on, where you're not thinking in language, you're thinking in experience, direct experience. Whether that's like creating something digitally, creating a whole other world digitally, we know the technology's there, or going into soundscapes like albums or movies or TV shows, and or you're looking at art from over the centuries and whatnot. Then the machine, the screen becomes a little different for sure. But you're still entering the screen. That's the first thing. You're both entering the screen first and foremost. Um, I think what's really interesting is reading the world and seeing the world, looking at the world. Because we look and see things, and then we eventually read the world. Now, when you have a society that reads everything, you fall into stereotypes and dogmatic tendencies. But when you have a society that looks and sees and feels instead of devolves back to reading, I think you create a much more open society among the public, amongst the individuals. You see the human in each other. I think the only way to control the screen as a government or a system that is trying to control the public is to force people to fall in dogmatic tendencies. to always be able to read and 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 redirect the mental image of their thoughts. This is a deep one. If you're following this, much appreciation to you. You like what I have to say. I'm just another one like you. That's another reason why I post is like I hate the influencer world. I post as this is a digital library of myself. It's not that I want to be remembered. It's like, maybe along the way, someone watches anything I do or listens to anything I post or whatever on whatever algorithm or social media. Maybe it lightens their life a little. And that's all I'm looking for. A little bit of like peace of mind. I mean, that's why I started writing and playing music and reading and painting and drawing. It's the reason why is because I was everything else on the digital world and the systematic culture that we find ourselves in was just it was nothing compared to what I felt and still feel. Because when you remove the language of the culture from your dialogue, from your world opens up into this mystery of experience instead of it already being unfolded in your language because people said this about that or said this about these people or said this about this place or book. You know what I mean? And that sort of mystery of having no language to really explain what you feel and what you're seeking and how you're interacting with people and the conversations and the art you're looking at and the sounds you're hearing and the weird things you've experienced that you can't explain. That in itself scares the living shit out of people who constantly have to reason with language. I think I'm going to end it there. I'm going to open my notebook, see what I. I feel like this is a. This is a great one to open up on. Cameras are agents of time travel, dimensional travel. And then I wrote, you need new vantage points, and you must use the vantage point to your advantage, not of the use of power, but of sight that sees all. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going.